This is an episode of Car Chats, people. Welcome to a new episode. This is going to be a very different set of topics today. Once again, I'm Alex.
I'm Peter. How's it going? And today we are talking about drugs.
Drugs!
And how much we love them. Kidding. Just kidding.
This is a topic that I think is, for our generation anyway, is going to be a topic that I think will be more debated. Especially in drugs, the issue of marijuana legalization and how marijuana should be regarded in society. With the recent legalization in Colorado and Washington last year, the issue has become kind of more hard-pressed. Now, when it comes back to video games, drugs...
Hold on, are we just going to hang out here, or...?
Well... What, do you not want to?
I don't know, I mean, we could.
What, after we get food?
Yeah, no, I thought we were just going to drive somewhere, but...
Oh, I didn't know we were... Because we have to be back in like 25 minutes. We're waiting for a pizza, by the way.
Yeah, that's true.
But, yeah, so with the issue of with drugs and video games, there's been controversy about it. If you remember, Peter, in Fallout 3, the drugs were used in the game, or a character could use drugs, and people got very upset about that. Whereas alcohol, that you can also use in the game, and nobody whispered about it.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows
what's interesting with Fallout, too, is that part of the controversy surrounding it involved the actual drugs you were using. You know, since you're the one who's playing Fallout 3, and when you were talking about Fallout 3 earlier today when we were waiting to order our food, it reminded me that the drugs in Fallout 3, you know what they were called, like Jet and something like that?
I think one's called Psycho, one's called Jet, and there's a couple other names I can't remember.
It was they were actually supposed to be real-world drugs like cocaine, heroin,
crack,
marijuana.
Yeah, I noticed that. One's Buff Out, which is probably steroids. I'm just wild guess on that one. So they are based on drugs, which is kind of interesting. And also alcohol drinking's in that game. People, there's people find, in the Fallout you find Scotch, whiskey, whatnot, and that's not controversial, which I think shows our reflection of the culture, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with legalization is a really touchy issue. It's a society issue, it's a, safety issue, and I think it's a moral issue. But as for me, I don't see, when it comes to marijuana, whether you use it or not, whether it's for medical purposes or not, I think that it's no more dangerous than alcohol is. Just from what we see of, like, people who use marijuana and people who use alcohol just seems to have a much more negative consequences. I mean, when you think of how physically damaging it is to your organs and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about exercising control.
Yeah, it's personal
self-control.
responsibility.
I mean, that's really all that it comes down to.
Which is the problem I have with the gateway drug theory, is that addiction is not, for many substances, some substances are just naturally addictive. Like, some harder drugs just have something in their properties that makes them addictive. But I think with marijuana, it's nothing physical. I think that's the other half of addiction, which is really psychological. Addiction is part of the personality. I mean, we've met people that just have addictive personalities, and I think that's kind of true.
And I've seen many people in life who, have a drug addiction, and that drug addiction is for marijuana.
Yeah, not to say that people it doesn't happen, but it's like alcohol, though. Some people are addicted. It's not like everybody gets addicted to alcohol. Some people some people are alcoholics, but some people aren't.
Yeah, it's that simple. I mean, it's the one thing that always pisses me off whenever people talk about drug addicts and just the nature of drugs in general. It's no one wants to become a drug addict. You know?
Addiction is not. It doesn't happen by choice. It happens unintentionally, and I just think that it's also just doesn't. Well, we've studied about it. It's it's not. I'm not gonna say marijuana should be good for you. I think the medical properties are still very debated, whether it's helpful in some things. It's been proven to help cancer patients. especially with the pain they deal with, which I've heard is excruciating. But, you know, even if setting aside whether it's uses or not, and there's some uses of marijuana that I'll get to, though, not health related, but I think compared to that, you know, marijuana doesn't seem as dangerous as other drugs that are legal. And, you know, the two are alcohol and cigarettes, and both of them have more dangerous properties. Both of them have a physical addiction component. As you know, people who go through alcohol withdrawal have very severe issues, and severe cases, it can adversely affect their health. They can die from withdrawal. And you've heard of it happening before. And I think, you know, cigarettes have nicotine, which is physically addicting. And that physical addiction is something I don't think marijuana has. The thing that the body can't really live without. Like, that's why people have such a hard time quitting cigarettes and alcohol. And I think marijuana doesn't have, I mean, whether it's addicting, I don't think it has that, it's an effort to quit. Because think of cigarettes, all the nicotine gum and nicotine patches. There's a market for that. And Alcoholics Anonymous, and, you know, the fact, and how we have a whole, basically, a whole, like, industry around alcohol recovery, too. I mean, look at all the alcohol, like, recovery centers that are everywhere, especially in LA, when you think about it.
Yeah, there's one actually pretty close to my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad because the people who go there are, you know, they're nice and harmless. From my experiences of bumping into them when, you know, walking home or something.
And, you know, here's an interesting thing that made me kind of want to do this discussion. There was something from a former legislator. Basically, he worked on the city council, and it was in Sacramento, and he gave this speech about legalization. It was in Prop 19, and he basically said that he explained why the gateway drug theory didn't work, and he says, the idea behind the gateway drug theory is that if you use marijuana, you use harder drugs. But he says, by making them illegal, you're ensuring that it's a gateway drug. Because, imagine, everybody who drinks alcohol, do you think all people who drink alcohol are going to start using, like, heroin or crack or harder drugs? No. By making it illegal, you're keeping it away from the black market. And, like, whereas a dealer in the black market will have weed, he also, will have access to other drugs. So keeping it illegal makes marijuana a gateway drug. That the risk that people have of, oh, I'll use marijuana, I'm going to use something harder. If it was legal, that risk would actually decrease.
Interesting theory.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting theory. And, you know, is it true? We'll have to see how legalization goes, I think, in Colorado and Washington. And we'll see what happens in the next 2 or 3 years to really kind of see what goes forward. But here's an interesting thing I learned while researching this is that even if, like, against the moral, you know, issues, from just purely, like, objective standpoint, or from when I mean by objective, economic, it's actually really useful. Because think of how much money we spend, like, busting marijuana and fighting illegal groups that use marijuana to fund their illegal operations. So by legalizing it, you kind of would stop all that money wasting, and you would reduce crime. Because that's how you really defeat, and a side note, that's how you defeat crime, really. You can't, I mean, for every criminal you lock away, there's going to be another one coming up in a criminal enterprise. It's all about the money. You know, without money, these groups don't exist.
I mean, that's really the case for just decriminalizing drugs.
I mean, all drugs. I mean, but that's a much more, and there are some politicians, libertarians, that have advocated decriminalizing all drugs. Now, do I think it will happen? No.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of on board with that because that's all of the ills, social and economic ills that you're talking about that come with drugs. It's because they're illegal, and just legalizing marijuana isn't going to fix all of your problems.
Yeah, I know.
You know, if you actually care about other human beings who have troubles in their lives related to drugs, then you've got to decriminalize it, because there's no way a heroin addict can honestly feel safe walking into, you know, a rehab clinic or going to a police officer if they're in trouble in some way or the other. Yeah. Because they probably, you know, because they've been doing heroin, and that's, you know, that's illegal. They might even have it with them or at their apartment or something. Who knows?
And I think, you know, that's part of the taboo. Like, marijuana is still very tabooed, yet other types of addiction are accepted, like prescription painkillers. I read from the drug DEA that prescription painkiller addiction is the most addicted drug in the world now. It has surpassed cocaine in the number of people addicted to it now. And remember, most of that prescription drugs are given out freely by doctors who basically, not that saying that most doctors are pretty honest, but there are shady doctors who, and even in and for the, in wealthy doctors like in Beverly Hills, it'll just prescribe drugs away. And that's, to me, is very, and especially like oxycodone, which is, is a very dangerous drug. It is not hard that you can get with prescription, but it's a dangerous drug. And many painkillers are dangerous, and people have died from painkiller overdoses before. And I'm thinking, name one person that's died of a marijuana overdose.
I can't think of anyone.
Most people who died that have marijuana in their system, but they usually have another drug. I think that's where a lot of the misconception, to me, I see it as misconception, happens. Because I think that, and also prisons are overcrowded, which we say is a lot of money. So we're wasting time, basically, we're wasting time locking up marijuana users who really often are just, smoking and not harming anyone, as opposed to locking up really dangerous people. People that we like, murderers, people that we want to be locked up. So I think that's just something that we have to keep in mind.
I mean, there's an astonishing number of arguments you can bring to the table for legalizing certain drugs or decriminalizing them.
Yeah.
It's just a vast array of
there's
different
more,
cases
but I think,
you can make.
I've said, I think, a big number of them, so I won't continue, but I think that the biggest reason why it isn't is that many different groups don't want it legalized because it interferes with their money. That's why it was made illegal. Marijuana, remember, was not illegal till the 1930s. But it was made illegal because the plant marijuana comes from is hemp, competed with the wood industry. Now, even if you don't like the smoking, legalizing the plant would also legalize hemp, which is where marijuana comes from. It comes from another plant. Like, marijuana is a plant, but it's derived from another plant, if you catch what I mean.
No, I know.
I'm trying to explain this so the listeners can kind of understand.
No, I know this whole story.
And it's, even if you don't support usage, I mean, if we, even for those who are most adamant, using the plant would be useful in many ways. And there are many different uses that people have found for it. So even if you aren't against setting aside marijuana, legalizing the plant would also just be helpful, and probably could be a new industry.
Yeah.
I've read many. Okay, go on.
I mean, the real problem with it though is just the fear surrounding it and telling people, no, it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
and just convincing people.
And that's the problem. There've been, if it's been banned since the 30s, and we all know Reefer Madness, the amount of negative propaganda has been going on for decades. So I think countering all that is really hard to do. And there are many misconceptions about it. And many of it, it's often, I think, a hypocrisy or a double standard that most people aren't even aware of. That most people who are against it are totally okay with, alcohol. Let me give you an example in the South. In the South, and I know I shit crap on the South a lot, but in many parts of the country, marijuana is still, it's considered a felony. But you see in many of these places that, alcohol drinking in bars where you can have guns in a bar. In many places in the South, marijuana is federally illegal, but having guns in a bar is okay.
Yeah.
And to me, that's ridiculous. I mean, how can smoking a substance that if you say you're only harming yourself be more dangerous than alcohol and guns put together?
Yeah, I've never understood how
that just
anyone can think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and how insane is that when you think about it? You're just wow, unreal. That the state would consider me less dangerous than, someone saying smoking in their own private home. And, I think the way Colorado's doing it now is fine. It could be, and I think it could really be a boon. I know alcohol companies are afraid of it, but I think, imagine if you had, and this would be, imagine a business I'm thinking.
It's just an entire industry, yeah.
That really if we that could be formed because it can be used in like in Amsterdam. People use it and it's used in public, but it's not caused disruption. It's not caused anarchy, and I think it could be real boon. And there's a lot of possibilities I see with it of different businesses and industries that if we legalize it, it could open a lot of doors. And what doors I've heard are possible. That's a completely another topic that we could go into, but from what I've researched, there are a lot of potential industries that are, it would be I've heard, here's the two big ones for that plant. It would be a good source of lumber, that it could, how it can be made into paper, and if it would replace trees, think of how good that would be for the environment. To me, I see it, and maybe I'm being too idealistic, but I see it as that when I really look at it, that legalization would bring so many benefits to different special interests when you really look at it detailed. So I think that it's beneficial to many, but there are many big industries that would be threatened, I think, if it were legal. I don't think that they would be threatened, but they see it as they're threatened. And for California, you remember
Well, I mean, yeah, those people just live in
ignorance.
In their own absolutely batshit insane world. I mean, please tell me how a multi-billion-dollar corporation can be threatened by a couple thousand families getting food stamps.
Nope, I will, and I don't, I will never understand that in my life. And I think that, let's go back to our own personal stories. Like, in high school, I'll admit it, I smoked when, in high school. And honestly, we were with people that were marijuana users. If you remember Jake was like a big one. But honestly, when you look back at the people we hung out with, it was just marijuana and alcohol, like often teenagers do. There wasn't anything, I don't know if Jake was ever on anything hard.
Well, to some extent, some kids did use ecstasy. I don't know. I don't know if anyone really frequently used harder drugs than that.
I don't know, but we were light compared to like stuff that other people were using, like Patrick Betty, if you remember him.
Yeah, don't use drugs.
But I think that I think it would be easier if it were legal, because more teenagers are now using prescription drugs because they're easier to get. And honestly, when they did this interview about asking teenagers, an anonymous interview, what is the easiest substance for them to obtain, and all of them actually, the hardest substance for them to obtain, and it was alcohol, and cigarettes. The legal products were the most difficult to get. And the Attorney General mentioned this point, and you know why he said they're harder? Because a drug dealer does not ask for ID, but they do. So I think that with its legalizing, I think actually underage usage would go down by that theory. And I'm just speculating here. I just want to make that note that I don't not all of it is backed by scientific data, but
Yeah, these are all just theories right
but
now.
I think there's more interesting theories, and I think more people are toward it, because I've always had the belief that people the government should not be bothered by what people do in the privacy of their own home. If they're not threatening to anybody, it's their business. So I don't think that we need to be told what to do. Like, if somebody and I think I understand why they do drug testing, but I think if there's a responsible adult that can that works a job but just smokes marijuana privately, I don't see the harm in that, as opposed to drinking privately. I don't see the difference. I don't see why one is so much worse than the other. This is kind of my that's my thought. Wow, I've been talking forever. Is there anything you wanted to add, Peter? Since I've dominated this conversation.
This is really something that you wanted to talk about, so I felt like I should just sit back and let you have say what you wanted to
Oh,
say.
I got
but,
most of my stuff out. If there's
yeah.
something you wanted to add.
No, I mean we're pretty much exactly on the same board when it comes to this issue. So I didn't really feel like I should try to interrupt you at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I just don't. I just think that. I think it's part of just the culture being more open-minded to what is considered taboo and non-taboo.
Yeah, that's the real problem with this whole thing. It's about just convincing people that they really need to rethink their views on this substance and to look outside of their own narrow view and to realize
And be open-minded.
the consequences of legalization and how it could benefit everyone in multiple sectors of society, or we just wait for them to die and hope that their children are more intelligent than them.
But honestly, what I think with Washington and Colorado will, I think it'll speed it up. Because they got legalized last year?
Yeah, in 2012. I mean, yeah, with those two states, it's just that finally the ball's gotten.
And you know what?
To
I
start
think that
rolling.
what they say once you open the gate, you can't exactly close it again, or some phrase like that. I was coming up with some super quote, but
Oh yeah, that's exactly the.
once you open the floodgate, you can't close it. So I think now we'll see how it. I mean, they haven't done all the regulation, like how.
Yeah.
I mean, they've legalized it, but it hasn't gone into effect.
Yeah, I
Still
mean, in
widening
many
the watch.
states too. In the last election where this issue was brought up, from what I remember, it wasn't as far apart as you might believe. Like, it was pulled around in the mid to high 40s and mid to low 50s,
Yeah,
which isn't that bad. So the attitude towards
it's improving.
marijuana has definitely changed over our lifetime.
Yeah, it has, and I think that. We'll see how it works out, and I think once people see it in action, I'd give it a couple years, because, since it's the first time it's been done, really, on a state level. There are a couple towns that have done it, and I think there's a town in Maine that legalized it, actually, and a town in Michigan, these small towns whose names I can't remember, but once we see it work, and once I think the very closed-minded people see that the sky isn't falling, so to speak, I think they'll finally be like, most of them will be open to it. I mean, they're always going to be the people who are just, closed-minded off, but...
Well, I mean, it doesn't even have to be most of them. It just has to be over 50%. Yeah, I see it. So I mean, I made my bold prediction a couple of years back that it'll be decriminalized or legalized on a federal level by 2020, which was very, very bold on my part, but... I don't know. I just have a feeling.
Well, how many years ago did you do this from now? Like
2 or 3 years.
Now that's 2013. Now does it seem more likely or less likely?
I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see
I
the
think
fallout from Washington and Colorado
it's going
legalizing
into effect in January when
Yes.
it's go fully into effect. So I think by after the first 6 months of next year, we'll really see something. So it might move faster than that date, honestly. Yeah, and it could be the 2016 election. It could be before 2016 or an issue in 2016.
That's possible. I'm sure it'll be a big issue in the next presidential election.
Yeah.
Even for the upcoming congressional elections as well.
Yeah. So I think we're entering into new territory. So I'm interested.
Yeah. Let's see what the future holds. Do you want to go check on our...
All right, guys, we're going to do a quick sign-off. We have to go get our pizza.
Yep. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few. All right. Peace.
Yeah, my bad about that. I forgot not to do first and last names. It slipped my mind.
Yeah. All right, so we just had a delicious dinner, and we are back to it. Are we talking about
the review of are we doing that in a separate podcast?
Oh, yeah, we can do something
we will be doing a separate podcast on this deep dish place.
Yeah, do you know what it's called?
It's called, it's a deep dish place in Los Angeles, and it's the first one, at least in the west side of LA, that I know of, and called Hollywood Pies, and we will be doing a full review of that in another podcast, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, Hollywood Pies. All right, yeah, I was really glad that you remember the name because I completely forgot what its name was.
It's when you grow up with a dad who's a food hound, so, or foodie as it's called actually. So yeah, this we're gonna continue our episode from the last one that we had. I just kind of wanted to bring up something interesting. You know, with Thanksgiving coming up, we have, of course, Black Friday.
Yeah, which you've never done before,
I have never
right?
done Black Friday, which sounds very weird. And
I mean, neither have I. And I feel like most of the people I know have never bothered to go near a store the day after Thanksgiving for that very reason.
Yeah. But I understand why people get it. I mean, people can get like a huge flat screen TV for hundreds of dollars, like $100 off. But it really almost seems not worth it in the end. Because I think Black Friday is what's interesting me about it is that, well, two things. One, I think it's more of a useless thing given in the age of, you know, they have a thing called Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday has pretty much negated Black Friday.
In my mind. Because what would I rather do? Sit in the cold at 5 in the morning? Well, now it's on Thanksgiving, which I'll get to that. My opinions on that.
So yeah, here are the scenarios you have. You can either wait outside of, I don't know, a Walmart starting on Thanksgiving morning, you know, at 5 in the morning in the freezing cold, while you miss spending time with your friends and families. Or you can wait until Monday and order all the shit you could have gotten at that store from your couch while you're sitting there in your blue race car pajama pants. How's about that? Alright, so I guess back to it.
Oh, back to it. Okay, where was I? I totally forgot. Oh, yeah. I just think that, one, it's pointless, as Peter, I think, accurately put it. And I think, two, it's just, I think to me, reinforces negative, excuse me, negative moral issues. I think that, I mean, every year, and this will happen this year too, some story comes out where something bad has happened on a Black Friday somewhere. I've never heard of a year it doesn't happen, because I think it shows how insane people can really get. I mean, we've had people trampled to death, unfortunately, before. We had someone, I remember, use pepper spray one year, and people get arrested. You get arrested because you really want a deal, like, and I'm not saying, this isn't a lot of people, this is only a few people that something this extreme happens to, but, I mean, that's insane. I mean, and the fact that we have to keep policed outside certain stores like Walmart, we need police to keep order on a shopping spree.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let the
It's
listeners absorb
consumerism
that.
at its absolute worst.
Exactly.
The absolute worst part of consumerism.
And I don't know if have you actually seen videos of Black Friday? Have you watched them on YouTube before?
A couple.
There are some where, and honestly, especially Walmart, because Walmart doesn't pay. I have a thing about Walmart on a personal note, but
oh my god, sorry, tangent. Everyone should have several bones to pick with Walmart.
Yeah,
back
Walmart,
to you.
Yeah, and thank you for that tangent. That was very accurate. Now, I imagine how terrible it is for the employees who now in many cases have to work on Thanksgiving. I would boycott any store open on Thanksgiving personally. But imagine how terrible it is just for the people who have to work there, from their standpoint. Now here's the thing about retail jobs, and I advise everybody, if you work in retail, if you're listening, I think you can understand this. I've known many people who worked in retail, that it's a really hard job, because people, when you're dealing with the public, you realize that the public is usually just kind of a jerk. This works in many, like, flight attendants. I know somebody who's a flight attendant.
Yeah, many customers have absolutely unreal expectations of what kind of services can be offered to them.
And no sense of courtesy. But excluding that, retail is a hard job. And imagine doing that on a Black Friday. It's that stress times 10. And, so, excluding that, and I can imagine how angry people must get. Because, eventually they're going to sell out of items, and the people who want the items can't get it now, and who did they take it on out? The retail people.
Yeah, because they're the only ones who are there.
And Yeah, it's terrible.
The board of Walmart isn't going to be at Walmart on Black Friday.
Yeah, it's all the the low minimum wage earners often that have to put up with that, and and this is not just Walmart, even though it's many other stores. And what caught me the most attention is I saw two videos that stand out in my mind. There was one at a Walmart and one at a Victoria's Secret. The Victoria's Secret,
really?
Black Friday, their employees holding the door, and the metal gate is pushing against them. You think there's it looks like a tidal wave is about to blow the doors open. And these employees open the doors and people just rush in. And there was this one for these I don't know, I think it was this lingerie, and there are people just all grabbing at the same one. So it was the stand of clothes, and there were 50 people surrounding it. And then that was just the Victoria's Secret one. And this guy, and it was from the position of looking in the store. There was a guy on the second story looking down, filming, and how crazy people are and shoving each other. And it's just kind of sad.
I mean, the one that I remember is the Stampede video that came out a couple of years ago. I don't know where it was, Walmart maybe, or Best Buy. I thought it was Best Buy. I thought that was the one you were actually going to mention.
Oh, was it Best Buy?
I don't remember.
The Stampede, I thought it was at a Walmart. The Stampede was
at a Walmart. There were
Walmart.
probably multiple Stampedes at Walmart.
Yeah, usually most of the Black Friday disasters happen at Walmart because their discounts are even more crazy than most stores. But speaking of Walmart, Walmart had the most crazy Stampede video.
Actually,
this guy was this kid. It looks like this kid.
Yeah, turn in here. Maybe.
This kid was about 19, and he opened the doors, and people started rushing in. To get out of the way, he had to dive over a table. I think that just is the most, and that's gonna be crazy. And how crazy people are, and almost that mob mentality in a way, but
it really does make you lose faith in the human race.
Yeah, it does. If that'll depress you to no end.
Yeah, there are human beings who,
and
you know what? There are people have died for a TV.
People have died due to shopping. That's the world we live in now. People have been killed for many stupid things. Money, anger, emotions. But people have died for a deal on TVs.
Hey, I want this TV for 40% off. It's a sobering truth, Alex.
Yeah, it's, I'm just saying, at least, people want discounts, and I get it. Wait till Cyber Monday. Wait till you're on the computer, so... It's just better that way.
For the fucking love of God, don't risk your life or someone else's life for stuff.
Yep, and there's just no point to it. It's just a very sad thing to me. Oh, at least wait till the day of after Christmas sale. At least it won't be as crazy as Black Friday.
No, it's really bad.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
I've never been to the day.
Yeah, I had to go to a mall once to return something for someone, and it was pretty much the way my schedule was working. It's alright. Either I go tomorrow, or I'm not going to be able to go for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So I had to go to a mall the day after Christmas. It was hell.
Okay.
Because
do you think it's Black Friday bad?
No, but it still sucked ass.
Oh, of course it does, but...
Yeah. And with that being said, we're going to take a break.
All right.
So we'll be back in a few. Shh. Wait, where'd he go?
Oh, he went this way.
Alright. Oh, there he is. Alright, people, we're back. Recording some stuff. And we're following the rave bike.
Yeah, we just saw this dude with this really pimp bike, and everyone's looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got purple lights attached to the wheels of his bike, and he's also got a jam box, so he's pumping some smooth R&B right now, and Alex just decided to tail this guy.
Nope, he looked back, so I'm not gonna not tail him anymore.
Alright, we're not tailing him anymore because... No, we are tailing him. those people?
Oh.
Okay, Alex.
What?
Okay, those two guys sitting
Two
outside
men.
of Best Buy. Are they homeless or are they waiting for
Okay,
Black
that guy
Friday?
just drove his bike on the sidewalk and just drove through.
Yeah. But do you think those guys are homeless or just waiting for Black
Nope.
Friday?
Nope. They look like two homeless guys. Actually, I can't tell. Could you tell? I can't.
I couldn't tell. But
I couldn't tell either, but we just saw that cool guy with a really, really kind of cool bike.
yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of tight.
Yeah, that was pretty bodacious.
Yeah, it actually was. Wow, I had an idea, but I can't remember it right now. Oh, I kind of remember on, here's an interesting idea. Do you think, you know, I kind of interested, I don't know, you probably don't want to go back to the legalization topic, but imagine like a weed cafe. Wouldn't that be a weed coffee shop here in LA? Like they do in Amsterdam. Like, wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Well, I'd say give it 4 to 5 years,
You
and
think we'll see one?
Yeah,
Oh, we'll see one in.
Yeah.
No, I heard that there's like, you know, there's actually oh crap, I just went the complete wrong way. They're like hipster ways of just, you know. There's actually now like when it comes to like, you know, I just thinking that would be interesting because, you know, when it comes to things like beer, you know, there are things as beer, you know, beer connoisseurs. Like there's beer tasting events and wine tasting events. There could be a marijuana tasting event.
yeah, there probably will be.
I imagine that existing in the future. Because I mean, it is a huge industry when you think about it. Just there's a lot of room for improvement and whatnot. So who knows? I think there's just a lot of interesting possibilities. I don't know why that thought that's such a random thought, but it just kind of interested me. I don't know. I was thinking it'd be kind of just it's interesting how culture changes. I noticed that when I was in the Best Buy just now. We always talk about these, you know, the Connect and you know how much we bitch about the phones not having the right apps or something, or what else do complaints about technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think we lose track of. Oh wait, let me put my window up. It's probably hurting the volume. What we lose track of is how much like compared to like the last 10 years. If you imagine like the year 2000 to like now, like 2003 till now, the last decade. You know, maybe in these last 13 years, really, how much the world's really changed is amazing. And even in the last, I think, 5 years, like, since we've gone through high school, since we were freshmen in high school to where we are now, and even probably through just our college years, think of how much we've changed, like the Kindle. Like, I see, they're now, like, in public schools using iPads in a public school. Like, that's saying something now. Like
yeah, well, that project's not gonna last for much longer.
I know. I just, you know what I heard when I heard that? I'm like, you know, those are all gonna get stolen, like, immediately.
I mean, that's pretty much what happened. You know, kids were.
Oh, is that what actually happened?
Yeah, kids were getting robbed when they were walking home from school.
Are you serious, people? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's, I mean, just think about it. Like, the idea, I think, of I mean, it's just kind of it's kind of impressive, really. Like the fact that the era of like Facebook and Twitter are now like companies traded on this Walmart, like the Wall Street. I just said Walmart. On Wall Street. I just said Walmart.
Traded on the Walmart.
Okay, that did not come out right at all.
Oh god, that was like your 2-pack shaker moment from last week.
Oh, shut up.
All right.
Shut up. No, that came out wrong. Okay, Wall Street. I mean, that's crazy. That the fact that the most talked about company among stock investors was about was about Twitter. I mean, that's just like saying something. I think a bit that we've reached a kind of a new point. I mean, I don't know, Peter. It just seems kind of. It's just kind of a new it's a new standard we've hit, and it's kind of I don't know if I should be excited or kind of sad about it. I think I don't know. I think I'm amazed at what the consequences will be 10 years from now.
Of what, technology?
Oh,
Or
what type of technology are we gonna see?
Because we kind of got off topic because you were talking about marijuana before.
Oh, I kind of got into it. No, I just think that once we, well, okay, should I get maybe? Yeah, I kind of went off topic, didn't I? Well, just kind of, I wanted to wrap up the last marijuana discussion by kind of talking about, like, not just about because, the marijuana legalization debate hasn't been about, is it okay to use it recreationally? Is it good for medicinal value? And recreational, I think, is more of a moral standard, just kind of like, alcohol has had a moral standard. I mean, that's how prohibition happened. And,
yeah, well, I mean, as I said before, hey, that's your taboo.
Yeah, that's your taboo. And, prohibition didn't work for alcohol. Why would it work now? That's always the first argument I always bring, because I think history is always the best argument. If it didn't work in the past, it won't work now. And why I think
it's definitely an old argument to the point where some people might say, oh, that's a trite argument, or that's cliche. But I mean, it's true. I mean, it's used so often.
Do you know why it's true?
No, I mean, it's used so often because it's a great example.
Yeah, and why I think it's why history is a great argument. I'm a history buff, so I always favor historical arguments. But because human behavior never changes. Cultures may change, customs may change, but human behavior remains constantly the same. When something was illegal, people went out their way to get it because it was something people wanted. And that's how we had the rise of people like Al Capone. So when we look back now, like, why would the same thing, and we see the same thing happening now? But I think that a part that isn't really debated is like the uses of the plant. It's called hemp. Hemp is the plant that marijuana is derived from. Now, the history, marijuana only had been around, I want to say maybe like as the plant that we know of, like that we think of as marijuana. It's only been around like 100 years or so, 200 years. But the plant it comes from, hemp, has been around thousands of years. Interestingly, I did archaeology at Mount Vernon, which is the house of George Washington. And there are residues or, fossilized remains of hemp plants. So George Washington grew hemp on his property, as did, so it's as an ancient civilization. So it's been around for thousands of years, which is, I think, an interesting thing. But what that plant is useful for, I think, should be why more people want to legalize marijuana. Because by legalizing marijuana, you're legalizing the plant it comes from. And that plant, here's what we've proved, we suspect.
I mean, there's a counter argument to that where you can say that, hemp and marijuana are two different things. Coca, the plant is legal, but cocaine, which is derived from the plant, is, not illegal. So.
Yeah, I know, but the difference is that both are now illegal under most current laws, and I think both are not harmful. And we've already discussed why we don't think marijuana is as dangerous of drug. Because according to the federal government, marijuana is put up on the same class, I think there's class 1, class 2, I'm not sure how the system works, but it's put on the same, on par with cocaine. And I think anybody who would agree that marijuana and cocaine, I think, are not under equal measure, So
well, I just wanted to bring up that point where just because, they're just the fact that they're derived from two different things, so someone who, opposes the legalization of marijuana could make that case. Say we can have hemp, but not marijuana, I guess.
Yeah,
I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's honestly why the big businesses that are against it are really against hemp.
Yeah, and that's
more
true,
so
but
than
I feel
marijuana.
like
Except the alcohol companies.
Yeah, I mean, my only problem with that take is that hemp's not the issue. The use of hemp's not the issue. It's just a group of people who have to get over it.
Oh, yeah.
Get over the fact that marijuana exists and people use it. That's the real problem.
Yeah, it's the real issue, but I'm just kind of adding as kind of a side benefit. what hemp is good for, and kind of just to if we legalize it, this is what hemp's useful for. It's useful for
Yeah, why are we parked
I don't
outside
know.
this person's house?
I
I thought you had to send a message.
again.
Keep going.
And the fact that they don't like, the idea of like gay marriage being acceptable. Like we had an English teacher, Charlie. Here's this interesting, Pete and I, we had
Don't use names.
Oh. Well, we had many, there were people in the administration too, and my younger brother, there were kids in his grade that were openly gay. And guess what? No one cared. We knew, there were probably people in our grade too, were there? Who were openly gay? No? Yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
There were. And as far as we know, nobody really cared. No one made an issue. At least I don't think anyone did, unless you heard of something. Did anybody make an issue that you know of? Because I can't remember.
No, I mean, we live in a completely different world than most of the country, and
yeah, we do.
I don't even know why I'm saying this, because you're well aware of that.
Yeah, but most people aren't.
Yeah.
Most people, I've heard some things, when I've been in these small towns, the part that I guess that to them, they feel, I'm trying to explain kind of how they feel, and how the world is so divided now, is that to them, they live in such a different world than they do. They kind of feel like they've, given the dominance of the East and the West Coast, these people feel like they've been forgotten about.
I mean, they have. That's the
I
thing.
just I see it more as I feel like they've been left behind.
No, they absolutely have, because
the world's changing.
Most of the people in the
fly-by states,
in the central, if you want to, I don't want to call them
fly-by states,
states, but in the middle of the country.
Middle of the country, yeah.
They've been they like us have been fed off the same fantasy that if you work hard, if you put your dues in, you will find success. Depending on what kind of job you will have, you'll be able to provide for your family. You'll have a good middle-class living. That's simply not the case anymore due to the structure of this nation. In the 80s with deregulation. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the case. And when you see just how much this country's changed and how little value these people have to this nation, we're at this point now.
What do you mean by value? Little value,
I mean, really, what do they do out there? I mean, who generates wealth, power, products for this country?
That lives in the middle of the country?
That lives in the middle of the country. Not
a
whole lot, unless you want to count certain corporations like Monsanto.
Or count a few certain cities, probably. I guess like Chicago, maybe.
Or
that's more the Midwest, but...
Yeah, but I mean, that's it. There's really... It's just these people who live in the middle of the country, they've also been fucked over by the same system that fucked over, ethnic minorities and poor people across the country.
In many ways, and yeah.
And it's just shocking that they don't side together. I completely lost track while monitoring this goddamn fucking piece of shit that doesn't do the goddamn thing it's supposed to. So
your recorder that's not working.
Yeah, so if you want to pick up off that point, Alex, feel free.
Yeah, and I think that people react differently when things have gotten screwed over. And I think that's also this clash we're seeing. It's not just of cultures, but of it's showing two reactions. I mean, I think of the the middle of the country and then the coast. I think the coasts have reacted the way half of people react to when things go bad, is that they say we need to change society, and we need to change our what is taboo and what's not taboo. That's, I think, one reason I think the legalization picked up from what I heard. Harking back to that is the idea of if we do this, we can get more money and cut spending, something we both need to do. And that's kind of, I think, how the movement kind of picked up, is like, oh, we need to generate money. Here's this product that's illegal, but we could make it legal, possibly. There we go. And also, changing society, making things acceptable. Then there's the middle of the country, which has, I think, the other reaction that commonly happens when things go bad.
Shit. Keep going.
What they do is, instead of trying to change things or change what's taboo or to change norms, they do the other thing, which is they scapegoat. Instead of trying to change and progress, they blame all the problems on an individual, an ethnic group, whatever it is. They scapegoat. They blame a group or an individual of some kind, and I think that's the two reactions, and shows the two sides of this clash of cultures.
Thank you for saying what I was trying to say before. God, I hate this thing so much right now.
I know. We're gonna fix the recording issues on this thing. I can't wait. But think about what, like, the Tea Party, like, I see is really the middle of the country, and they really are is focused to me, and maybe I could be wrong, or somebody's gonna disagree, of course, but they say all the problems are because blaming it on Obama, liberal people, some minority group, immigrants, illegal aliens. I mean, the amount of groups that are now being scapegoated, I mean, I could go on.
I mean, they're just...
Muslims, that's the new hate one, too, which is ridiculous, and I will go into... That's another topic, but...
I mean, it's all about feeling like the world discarded you.
Yeah, so it's easier to blame...
And the thing is, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong, but I think it's easy for people to, like, scapegoat. Like, it's easy to scapegoat.
Yeah. Oh, it's very easy. It's a hell of a lot easier than trying to come to the table and offer solutions to fixing the fucked up problems.
I think the problem is that, is always the problem I've had with groups like that who are scapegoating. I'm like, okay, you can blame this on anybody you want to, and who the blame rests on is, I think, what people fight about, instead of like, okay, you want to blame this, well, what are you going to do? And that's how I think you can identify, like, kind of, is a great question to ask people, is that, okay, you can blame, like, I asked this to, my family in Texas, they're quite conservative, as you can imagine, being in a small town in Texas, and I asked them, like, when they hate, something Obama's doing, or hate Obama, or blame Obama, I'm like, okay, we'll just accept your premises about why you think Obama's the worst thing ever. What are you going to do? Go. And that's kind of, I think, the part of the problem, is that too many people, and not just from political points of view, but from many other things, just scapegoat way too much at the time. With problems with the schools, we either blame the teachers, blame this, blame the politicians. We keep kind of saying it's because of, we honestly are just scapegoating. I think a lot, and I think that is what I think really needs to change, is that we need to stop scapegoating. And that'll never end, because it's easy to scapegoat, so people are always going to do it, but I think that's what we're seeing, is kind of that happening. And this happens whenever there's a cultural shift. There's going to be two sides: the people who don't want things to change, who scapegoat, and then the people who want things to change and fighting against those who are scapegoating. That's just how it's always been, The Civil War was like that too, really, in essence, and...
Very well put,
It
Alex.
was like that too. The South, and it was about slavery. Anyone in the South, and by the way, if you ever see...
You know what? Wait, time out. Don't even bring it up.
I'm not even...
Yeah, at this point, if you don't know, you're not going to get it, and you don't want
to. I'm
not wasting... Let's not waste our time on people like that.
I know, but... It's really nothing new. It's different issues and different cultures and norms, but this is just, progress versus the people who don't want the progress. And what I always will say to people who want things to go back to the way they were, and when I see this in many people in the middle of America, they keep, to me, wanting to go back to this time in America. I call it the 1950s idealism that didn't exist. They're like, these 1950s were this great time, except knowing my grandparents, who most of them are still alive and they're in their 90s now, that wasn't really true. You see that in a lot of this middle America, this kind of nuclear family, church, everyone goes to church, everyone...
Usually located in some sort of suburb.
Located in some sort of suburb with the white picket fence, and everybody basically thinks the same. And and they say the 1950s because it was kind of like that, but was it really?
I mean, only for a handful of people.
Yeah, one, it was only for a handful of people. One, it was, and very small number of people, and it really wasn't great back then. You know, it really wasn't. Like I've heard the stories that my grandmother has told me about living in the 1950s as a woman and how bad it was. It was, unless you were a white guy, it was pretty crap. Yeah. That's just like, I'm just gonna say that straight up. It was terrible.
And I mean, I didn't really want to bring up the point of race and the point I was trying to make that you so eloquently did. But that's really what it's all about. It's just the fact that white males, for the most part, those who live in the middle of the country, all want to get back to that point where you have that privilege where if you just work hard, you will get what you want. And that's that's a fantasy. Mostly, if you want to call it white male privilege, that's
I think
fine.
What a lot of them miss out, as you see
and a
on
lot of
Fox
them miss
News.
out.
I know it's all the Fox News, it's all white guys just
because
pointing that out.
Their skill set or what they have to offer isn't valued anymore.
Like manufacturing jobs.
Like manufacturing, yeah. All the manufacturing jobs in this country have vanished overnight.
And that's why, honestly, why we should have hemp. But anyway, that's as I mentioned earlier. That would bring back manufacturing.
Hold on.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't fuck me, phone. Okay, you didn't. Yeah, so they've been raised off of this, and when they grow up and realize that it's completely been stripped away from them, they externalize their anger onto others.
Yeah, they
usually on people who are of a different gender, religion, or ethnicity, and that's the real problem.
It is.
As you pointed out, it's all about scapegoating, and they're just scapegoating different groups of people for reasons that aren't their fault. And the worst part about it all is that these I don't want to blame white men.
Yeah, I know.
But
it's usually white guys though, so.
But I mean, okay, fine. I'll just say it. So these white guys don't understand that the same problems that are facing the same groups that they're demonizing, whatever they mean, Mexican immigrants, black people, fucking Muslim immigrants, you name it. They're all facing the same problems.
Exactly.
The exact same problems. So there really has to be, I don't want to say a populist party because, there's some bad connotations that come with populism.
Yes.
But I feel like that's what it takes, where you just have to be able to show them, hey, the same shit that you're dealing with in your life is the same shit that this person is dealing with in your life. You want to fix it? You want to not deal with this shit? Figure it out with this person. Because who's a good example of this?
Of what? Sorry, text that way.
I'm thinking Donald Trump right now, but I feel like there's a better example. Or actually, you know what? Mitt Romney.
Yeah, what about
Mitt Romney's not you.
No.
Mitt Romney does not share any of the same problems as imaginary white guy that we're talking about. He is in an entirely different world.
And that's why
yet somehow by the grace
he didn't get elected.
Yes, yet by somehow due to the grace of his ethnicity, gender, and religion, you somehow agree with everything that he says. Even though he does not care, he does not share your interests in the slightest.
Yeah, and honestly, there are people who just who are up. Yeah, I know, because exactly, and he's Mormon, but not that it matters.
I forgot about that.
He is Mormon.
He is a Mormon.
And Mormon, I don't mind. We had a Mormon music teacher. Remember, when we first got to our high school?
Oh yeah,
he was a cool guy. He was.
No, it's just the reason why we're bringing that up is because Mormonism is demonized by just about everyone under the sun.
Yeah, it is. Mormon is pretty demonized, but the thing I see is that even if you wanted to go back to a time, you can't never go back in the past. It's impossible. by the time things have changed so much that you can't go back to the way things were. And many of it, it's just the way that technology has, how our culture has changed, it would never work now.
Yeah, so rapidly, too.
It's changing so rapidly that, and now the change with tech is now accelerated in the past 10 years. And I think,
and it's pretty much
and the
permanent,
pace of change,
too.
and it's permanent change. The internet has made and it's the internet, really.
Yeah.
It's made a permanent change, and it's accelerated change.
Yeah.
Think,
I mean, here's
I'm sure
a case...
between now and 5
sorry.
years, it's going to change more. And because that accelerated change, that's why looking back, it's like, I wish things were they were back then. Now, maybe you could have done it 20 years ago maybe in the 80s you could have done that, but in the world we live in now, in the technology-centered world, going back is impossible.
It's impossible. I mean, for example, in most auto manufacturing plants, cars mostly are instructed by automated machines.
Yeah, and
we're not going back to
old school mechanical
lines with people.
Can I make an interesting point?
Okay.
My mom we had this old car. It's a 93 MR2. It's a 1993. It's 20 years old now. It has about only 64,000 miles on it. So, and it's an old school car. And I remember I've taken it to get repaired before, and mechanics always loved it, taking it, because it was old school. Because most cars now are all computerized. A car has an internal computer system in it. There is no mechanic, and that's part of the changing world, that the mechanic, where everything in the car is done by hand, doesn't exist anymore. The individual small-town mechanic doesn't exist anymore. Or, that's just part of a system that's gone obsolete. And think of other things that have gone obsolete. Cassette tapes, DVDs, they're just VCRs.
Pretty much all physical media. I mean, we
talked
about Blockbuster last week. Think of how many people lost their jobs because Blockbuster's closing.
Yeah, and I think Best Buy will go the same way.
Yeah,
electronic stores will probably, because it's all bought online now. I'm sure electronic stores will eventually go the same way too. I can imagine, and I think that.
I mean, and that's just that must just be the worst feeling to have, for someone to pretty much say, your way of life is obsolete. Either you are going to have to get with the times or
fade out.
Or fade out from the world. Those are your options.
And it's not, it's hard to go through. It's the rapid change of pace, I think, could have negative effects in the future. We'll see where we go, but that's just the world I think we live in. And I think that people don't because the internet, as in terms of a technology, it's a very new one, really. I mean, it's compared to all of history. It's only been around since it's entered into the world since 95, let's just say, when people began using it.
Yeah,
it took a while for everybody to have it, but
yeah. When would you say that just about everyone had an internet connection?
2001.
Yeah, probably either the late 90s at the earliest.
1999 or 2000.
Yeah.
I guess that's pretty accurate.
I'm going to say late 90s at the earliest.
At the earliest.
Was when the internet became very, very, very available.
So the internet on a wider scale has not been around very long. But we can see that
it's already had huge effects on society.
That the only way to do something is to change the norms of society, because we can't go back beyond a certain point. We've really hit a point of no return.
Yeah. As a writer on thegreatcrack.com said, if someone tried to shut off the internet, we would kill them in a heartbeat, regardless of what their purpose was.
Yeah, if the internet...
We would destroy them.
Yeah, it's,
because so many things revolve around
the internet.
So, yeah, there's no way that we can go back to the fantasy of the picket fence.
Yeah, the picket fence fantasy doesn't exist anymore. It can't, and, for some people that's terrible, but it's the way the world changes. It's just... And, you may not like it, and you have a right to not like it, but honestly, I prefer it now as opposed to then.
Yeah. I mean, no, who the hell wants to go back to the 50s?
I don't.
I mean, really.
I'm a white guy, and I don't want to go back to the 50s. Hell. I don't. It was pretty terrible. People idealize that time, but let's, like, that, for people who are in middle America, I think they think that's a great time because they really almost share a lot of the ideals that they have. Everybody goes to church. You basically are expected to do it in this time. But
we're gonna have to
we're gonna have to
up
wrap it
soon.
up. But
yeah, my phone's
dying. But
dying
we
fast.
the internet's change. The internet is like one of those changes. It's like the invention of, like, I'm trying to think of have an equivalent. It's like
I don't know,
when we first
the machine gun or something.
yeah, like the invention of the machine gun, I guess. The lesson is that it's so changed. It's basically, it's like it's like a permanent glue onto the fabric of the world. It's like permanent glue. It's there. You can't undiscover something.
Mm-hmm.
Once we've discovered the usages of the internet, you can't undiscover it.
Yeah, you can.
Nothing can be undiscovered.
I mean, I don't want to launch into a discussion about nuclear security, but that's the big problem with securing with with WMDs and how to stop the proliferation of them.
It's kind of like the invention of the atomic bomb. Well, not quite. I think that level, the internet's not quite at that magnitude. I don't know.
I think it is.
Maybe.
I think it is. You know what?
It's
the atomic bomb's a lot better than my machine gun example. I just thought that because the machine gun changed how we fight wars, that it and the way how we fought wars led to so many different changes in the world. But yeah, the atomic bomb is much better
the way I see technology, I think in the future, because you never know how something's going to be regarded by how history looks upon it because we're living it. But I think people 20 years, I think 40 years from now, we'll see the invention of the internet almost like the invention of, like, farming. Maybe not quite that, but it's changed the world forever. It's one of those. I call it a consciousness shift. It's a shift in the way we think about the world, and the invention of the atomic bomb did that. It caused us to shift how we think about the world.
Completely changes how you think about every single aspect of your world.
And the internet, I think, is exactly like that. It changes how we think about the aspects of our world. We can't go back from it, people. We can't, even if you want to. Yeah. It's how big of a change it is.
You can't. Shit. Motherfucker.
You can't go back to a pre-nuclear world. You can't go back to a pre-internet world.
Yeah, you can't stop progress.
And that's...
No matter how hard you try. And I think that's it.
That's the word.
That's the word.
I don't know why that came out.
Alright, so we're done. My phone's about to die.
I just quoted Stephen Colbert.
Alright, good night, people.
Good night, people. That was